Half knowledge is dangerous for health, so dive deep into it. Hey all, welcome back to my channel. I'm your reader Kritika Dadij and I'm reading Legends of Pensam by Mamang Dai. So today I'm going to read second part of the subchapter Rights of Love. So let's get started. What? Huh? Look at the poor creatures, the villagers were saying when the ground began to roll and tilt with a deep, angry rumble. The villagers, peering out their homes, gasped to see the familiar outlines of the hills, tilting and swaying rapidly from side to side. The earth opened up and hills were swallowed as the savage quake shook the earth and tore apart huge chunks of forest. It was one of the biggest earthquakes of the century. It measured 8.6 on the Richter scale and it came late on 15th August 1950. The river that Neenam had so loved was thrown off. It of course as a mountain collapsed and blocked its path. In a furious battle, the river rose in a mass of churning, heaving water and swung inland, swallowing half of Pico town. All the houses and the tree lined avenue of the Miglin quarter were gone forever. Then it swung west and spreading wider still it tore away every sign and symbol of the past years. And the school that Neenam had hated and the town itself were sunk beneath the flood water. According to the old people, the tremor continued for many months, and the town and the marketplace were covered with dead fish. High in her new home, Nina heard the river roaring and might have imagined it was the sound of aeroplanes at war that David had described to her, or the waves of a sea. She became silent, and Cow could see that she was shocked and saddened by their cruelty of nature. She clasped Losie and cried out every time, and the bed shook with the aftershock of the earthquake. Cow put a chain on the tin trunk and tied it to the thick wooden post so that it would not slip away. He stood by her and told her that a number of distant villages had been buried under massive landslides and that many people had lost their lives. In their vicinity, the houses of so many villages had collapsed. But he assured her that because the buildings were so light, built only with bamboos and wooden posts, no one had died. The only injury was to old man Buku, who had been hit on the head with a bamboo pole. But then everyone said he deserved it because he had been missing from his own school, own house that night. It was a fearful time and it was a sad time. Lucy's grandmother wept and shouted for her old man, who, however, was safe and mobilizing men on the other bank of now unrecognizable river to receive relief material. When the first aeroplane arrived with food and medicine, the villagers had to lever a strip of land and place perforated steel sheets on the ground to cushion the weight of the aircraft. Small river boats floated away, and men and women were marooned for days on sandy islet that rose or disappeared with the swelling tide of water. The land was changing, and with these changes, lives were changing. Cow saw the river spreading like the sea and watched the sun where it fell into the distant water. Neenam stared at the restless, agitated land, and her eye scrutinized the broken lines of the hills. Once upon a time, a tender radiance had mapped these hills and the river. It seemed her heart died very quickly. One day, a few years after the earthquake, Neenam went as usual to the water pond just beyond the orange trees. She felt dizzy and sat down on the wet stones, sighing with wonder at the glittering leaves of the trees. It was the wind that carried her away, they said. She must have lain down and surrendered without a struggle, because when the women found her, she was already stiff and cold. The first thought that struck the two women was what to say to Cow. They rushed to another village elder's house and gasped out the news. Cow was away in the new ground, looking at some construction work for an office building that would make Motam the circle headquarters of the area. "We must tell him immediately," the old man had said. It was a simple thing. Men and women died, and the news was told to one and all as soon as possible. It was a mark of respect, but no one had expected Neenam would die so silently without a trace of illness. And no one wanted to be the one to break the news to Cow. In the end, two young men ran all the way towards the high field to look for Cow. He saw them running up the hill and came down. He had only to look at their frightening faces to know that something terrible had happened. He didn't say a word but ran past them towards the village. It is said that when a loved one dies, those who mourn should not soil the passage of the soul from one world into another with tears. Those who remember say that it was the village that mourned Neenam's death more than Cow, because collectively every man and woman mourned for Cow as well. He was the one who was left behind, and he was cloaked in a thick cloud of silence that made many people think that he would lose his mind. When the body was laid out, the women covered their faces and wailed. They scolded Neenam for going away so suddenly. She was still so young. "Oh, what a beautiful woman you were," they cried. "Look at you now. Oh, did you not want to stay longer as the beloved daughter in law of the village, huh? This is our life. We do not know when our time will come. Go in peace. Go in peace. No other beauty will match yours in this world or in the next. Do you remember how we crossed the river so many times? Now don't look back. Go in peace." The village was crowded with relatives and visitors who had traveled from afar. They walked in and out of the house, and Neenam's old friend Yasam and Nayang took over the household to feed everyone and accept the cloth and gift for the dead. Cow stayed away in the interior of the house. Rocket's father said that when he came for the burial, his heart had been wrenched by Cow's sadness. The man was pretending. He was looking up into a mirror on the wooden post, and he would not turn around to meet me. I just stood there looking at him, pretending to comb his hair while he prepared himself to face me. It was terrible. I also wanted to shout and weep, but there are moments lived on unspoken terms, and Cow did not allow me to weep. When he finally turned around, he greeted me normally, and we started the preparation for the burial. I have never seen a man hold himself like that. But I knew that he was growing stronger because he had accepted that he would remain inconsolable for the rest of his life. When Hoxo and Rocket had barged into Cow's house that night, Cow had been secretly happy to see their fresh, young face. It was some years since Neenam's death. He told the boys that he was planning to send his young daughter to the school in the town close to their village. And quite unreasonably, this piece of information has excited Hoxo, who, for the rest of his stay in Motam, began to visit the quiet house frequently and became very attentive to Kao's silent nature and unspoken words, just as Kao had once been in the Sogang household. Thus, the two families were linked up like this. And one day, there was a great stir in the schoolhouse of the town when Lossie crossed the river with her bag and books to take her place as the new entrant in the school register. At this time, many families were leaving the old home villages and converging on the town in search of open land for permanent settlement. Cow was one of the few who kept his distance, and he never left the village again, choosing to stay by the side of his beloved Ninam, who was buried in the grove of orange trees. From this vantage point, he looked out across the land and saw the hills rising row upon row and sinking into the sheet of water where the river fanned out like an ocean. The land was under siege. Myriad forces were nibbling away slowly but surely at its very foundations. Soldiers of the new rulers of the land, armed bands who wanted their own land to rule, plainsmen and their co conspirators from the hills who came to bring down the old trees and flatten the hills. The roots of trees, clumps of bamboos, the hidden life forms in the ancient body of the earth, were being uprooted. Cow noted all this with his meticulous eyes for details, but nothing worried him in his patient stillness and memory of the past. Nothing changes that much, he thought. The hours pass, the days go, and still love lingers, while the mist covers the land and the rain drones the hills. Today, tomorrow, what does it matters? Time moves on, and to survive in one piece, all one needs is the ferocity of a lion or the heart of an angel. He saw the children changing and learning new things, and he smiled when he heard them speak in a new tongue, while writing words in new script that no one in the village could read. Across the river, young men and women walked to a school that was more than a mile away from their homes. In Duyang, they crossed small stream and hurried through a forest of tall trees and dense undergrowth that could hide tigers and leopards. Many years passed like this. Then, one day, Hoxo's mother decided to go and call on her husband, old friend Rocket's father. The old man was still sturdy and well enough to pick a quarrel with his son, who was beginning to show all the sign of a rock dedicated only to idleness and flirting with the young girl. Rocket, at that time, was also a terrible prankster, and a trick of his had already became the stuff of legend. Once he had a fit on the way to school. He suddenly collapsed and rolled about on the leaf, shuddering and twitching as if invisible strings attached to the treetops were pulling him apart. Of course, he was pretending. He wanted to scare the girls. One of them ran off screaming. The news reached Rocket's father, who responded immediately by sending out a number of relatives to the aid of his son. Rocket managed to keep up the twitching right into the house. In fact, the difficulty now was how to stop. His father, an immense man, watched his son keenly. He was a little perplexed, perhaps, but the women were afraid and making a lot of noise, so he lost no time in calling for the shaman. Rocket's twitching grew more acute. The spell broke when the time came for the householders to catch the black pig. That was the expected requirement for the shaman to restore Rockets to his sense. All the squealing and thudding of feet made Rocket titter. The old man got wind of something, and Rocket recovered fast enough to leap out of the house, clutching his shoes and shouting at the top of his voice. Enough, enough, ha 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 ha, oh, this is too much. He stayed away from the house for days, and his father did not look for him. Let him play in the forest, he said. Hoxo himself has been writing love songs, although the summer night of rain and wind, and now he had a thick sheaf of these notes and songs. They were never addressed to anyone by name, but Rocket knew, and he began to shout out to everyone that Hoxo was going mad with love for someone whose face could only be described as a flower, and whose body and limbs flowed like liquid gold. So when Hoxo saw his mother dressing her hair and smoothing her gale before leaving the house, he sensed that his fate was being decided. She had raised him strictly with love and attention, and though she had never held long conversation with him, nor been demonstrative, the watchful distance for Hoxo had been filled with a sure tenderness. Now his mother smiled at him, and Hoxo felt his heart swell with love and respect for his wonderful women who had kept him safe and happy and given him everything all these years since the death of the men who had rescued him from the burning hills. Rocket's father was good enough to call on the maternal uncle of the village, and they all set out for Motum to meet Cow. It was a simple matter. There was no enmity between the families, and Cow was an educated man who did not question the antecedents of the declared son of Luthor. So it was that one February day the young Hoxo stood on the ferry and saw the green walls of the opposite bank approaching him. It was the color he remembered and loved, and when a gust of wind wiped the green bamboo into a delicate dance, his happiness was complete. In those days, the ferry boats carried chicken, goats, people, everything. A bridge or two had been built, and many more. Bigger ones were built in later years, but the ferry remained the best method of crossing the river, as it is even today. The bridges spanning the river have all at some time or the other been torn away by flood water, and the land is dotted with old bridges standing derelict over sandy dunes, where the river had changed courses so many times. When Hoxo and his party arrived, Cow received him with great joy. His life too was tied up with the village of Duyung, after all. So many of his days had been spent sitting in the house of Sogong, waiting for Ninam to recover for her old wounds and learn to love him. Now their daughter was being given away in return as a daughter in law to that same village. Losi was a very young woman, but she carried herself with inherent grace. And as everything was settled with the blessing of all the elders and family clans, Hoxo carried away Losi, daughter of Ninam, across the river again. Apart from the wedding gifts of beads, brass vessels, and metal plates that every bride takes with her, Lossie also had in her possession the old tin trunk that contained the only tangible mementos of vanished paths. That's it, my dear. So if you like it, please share it, subscribe it. That's all. So we'll meet tomorrow. Bye bye. Take care.